Now
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
7:06 now. We keep plugging along here on this Tuesday morning, a very busy one, as sadly anticipated yesterday. There were indictments handed down for President Trump, coming right on the heels of a really bad news cycle for Joe Biden. So, you got to do what you got to do, apparently. We've got full coverage of that this morning, coming up in just 10 minutes with Kash Patel, author of Government Gangsters, former federal prosecutor himself. 7:35, Kevin Roberts of Heritage Foundation. 8 o'clock, we kick things off with Jerry Dunleavy and James Hassan, who have a brand new book, really the definitive book about the end of the Afghan war, and Joe Biden, who has blood on his hands. 8:15, Liz Harrington, spokesperson for former President Trump. And then at 8:35, we're going to check in with two executives in charge of Native American Guardian Association who are threatening to sue the commanders, change that name back to Redskins. So that's a lot. Julie Gunlock is here to help me through it. Thanks, Julie, for being here. And let's turn to our friend Curtis Houck of Media Research Center. He's the managing editor of Newsbusters. And I do want to get into how the media is covering up all the allegations on Joe Biden and how that juxtaposes against the coverage of Donald Trump. But you've got something going on here, Curtis, that I think sort of reflects concerns and issues that a whole lot of people are dealing with. You're about to leave the country. You've been planning this trip. In fact, Curtis, if I may, this is going to be your honeymoon outside the country. Is that right?
Yeah. Good morning, Larry and
Good
Julie.
morning.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I'm going to be going on my honeymoon starting on Monday. I'm getting married on Friday.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And so, my fiance and I were, we've heard all the news about our passports, about passports in general. So we decided, we're going to get this done well in advance. My fiance sent hers in April. And up until a few days ago, we had heard nothing. We had heard absolutely nothing. And
strangely, if I remember, Curtis, because I know you detailed this on social media, did you apply basically at the same time as your fiance?
I applied a week or two later, and I still got mine before hers. I got mine back in about 7 weeks, which is what the State Department, our glorious State Department, advertises. If you pay the expedited shipping, it's supposed to be 7 to 9 weeks. Well, I haven't shared this yet, but my fiance finally received her passport yesterday.
Hey.
No thanks to our amazing government. All told, it was about 17 weeks.
Wow.
From when she applied to when she received it.
This seems really arbitrary because we actually had to renew and I know we're renewing. Was this a renewal or was it a new passport?
It was a renewal for hers, yes.
See, that usually goes faster because ours. So it does seem like if you just happen to be one of those unlucky people, which
it's insane.
Seems to be happening more and more now.
And Curtis, do you think that you finally got yours because you have a little bit of a media profile here in D.C.?
Larry.
Well, I would definitely think so. I mean,
Maybe.
I put out a huge Twitter thread, and and to be bipartisan, it was Senator Mark Warner's office. He's been tweeting up a storm about passports, and his staff has actually walked the walk on this one. Tim Kaine, who's up next year, radio silence from my fiance, and Don Byer's office, where she lives and where I live with her now. They said, well, the State Department has an embargo and we're not supposed to reach out to them. Like one of their reply guys replied to me on Twitter last week, and he's like, well, sorry, we're not supposed to do anything. No, you fight for your constituents. That's what you're supposed to do.
I'm sorry. Don Byer's currently attending college. He doesn't have time to worry about his constituents.
Well, and his staff is too busy removing the gas oven from your kitchen. So
right.
Priorities.
Right.
Hold on a minute,
right,
Curtis.
Exactly.
Hold on. Did you just say you're currently living with your fiance?
Oh, yes.
But your wedding date is this Friday, Curtis.
Yes.
Right. We're going to go a little Catholic radio on you here, Curtis.
I'm just a little disappointed by that. That's all right. We can move on. It's fine. You're taking care of it, so that's good. Well, I'm glad you finally got it. But as you put this out there, I mean, I saw it and I've been hearing it too. This is happening all over the place, right? Yeah. Did you get reactions like, yes, I'm in the same boat? Has there been any sort of official word from the actual State Department about what is going on and whether they're going to rectify this delay?
Well, they have really not been saying much. They've just been saying, other than, Mark Warner's office kind of digging out our passport. And the thing is that I've realized in all of this, folks, is they really won't move. Like congressional offices and the State Department, they won't really move or try to get you in a physical in-person appointment for an emergency passport until you're within 2 weeks of when you're traveling. And in some of these cases, if you get an in-person appointment, they'll be like, I knew somebody whose spouse lived in New York, and they were like, oh, yes, we have an appointment for you if you're willing to fly in a couple days to Little Rock. Like, are you kidding me? No.
So, Curtis, you've been through this. I know it's had a happy ending, but what do you tell people who might not have a media presence like you or can't go on a radio show like us? What do you tell people? What's the best thing to do?
Right. I mean, be persistent. Don't give up, I mean, my fiance and I did a lot of prayer, and she was, to her credit, she threw some tears and, Don Byers' office telling her to screw off, that you got to keep after it and just know that, they're not really going to lift a finger. Nobody's really going to lift a finger until you're within about 2 weeks. And 25 million passports are expected to be taken care of this year. Wow. I mean, that's just insane. In James Lankford's office, he said to The Hill a few weeks ago that normally his office handles 35 to 50 active cases at one time. Now it's between 150 and 200 at a time, and that's just in Oklahoma.
Well, Curtis, imagine if the grown-ups weren't back in charge right now with the Biden administration, and we had to. I'm
supposed to be grateful.
Yeah,
we're supposed to be grateful,
exactly.
Larry.
By the way, Curtis, I mean, it's not like, listen, Curtis is a young man. I guess he's got a highfalutin title there, managing editor of Newsbusters, but Brent Bozell, notoriously cheap over there. It's not like he's making a ton of money. And it's not like, but they're treating it like, oh, well, if you have to cancel your international dream vacation, oh, well, just take the loss. It's not like you were going to get that money back if you didn't get your passport.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, folks. Not all of us are able to live in multi-million-dollar homes like a lot of people
like
in this area.
And Don Byer,
yeah, like Don Byer.
Yeah, I know.
And this is so terrifying for people. You apply in April. And again, this is a renewal. You think that's enough time. So I mean, one bit of advice I would give people is do it even earlier. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the backlog there is really bad.
They say to renew 6 months before you hit the 6 month mark. So in other words, a year before it actually expires. You should probably inch that up. Curtis, before we lose you, I know you track the media so well. And do you? I got a bit of a feel for how they covered the special counsel appointment on Friday. But have you? I mean, listen. Finally, the media can't ignore this story as they have. They ignored the IRS whistleblowers. They ignored the Devin Archer testimony, as you guys at Media Research Center have cataloged. But what kind of coverage did this get over the weekend?
Yeah, just really quick, the big numbers here. I mean, between August 1st and August 11th, there was, well over 341 minutes on the major broadcast networks of just the third Trump indictment. So we're just talking about January 6th. But between that same time period, there was only 4 minutes and 50 seconds on any mention, vague or specific, of the Biden scandals. 4 minutes and 50 seconds before Merrick Garland came in and saved the day. Yeah. Because Merrick Garland came in, now they can talk about it. And we got up to 77 minutes. But now with the fourth Trump indictment, guys, this is all going to go away.
Of course.
They're going to have to come up with other Trump indictments because, this Hunter Biden stuff, it's not going to go away. We know our friends at the New York Post and the Daily Mail and Washington Examiner and elsewhere are not going to stop digging.
Yeah.
James Comer's not going to stop digging.
Nope.
So they're going to have to find up some new indictments or something else to cover this up.
Well, and Curtis, the real crime here from the media's perspective, beyond the lying and the obfuscation, but it's really, this is a crime against journalism in that these viewers, when this finally, a huge story broke and developed with Merrick Garland announcing this, their viewers were so ill-informed. They had no idea what was going on because they haven't been told anything.
Right. I'll make 2 real quick points. Number one, that's exactly right. Because listen, folks, whoever the Republican nominee is, whether it's Donald Trump or somebody else, is going to need our friends and family who watch these networks, who don't listen to WMAL or any talk radio station, don't read, conservative media or watch Fox News. So this kind of stuff needs to be explained. You can't come across just dump the ink out on the chalkboard or the chalk on the chalkboard. You can't just do that. And then the second one is with the Fulton County coverage, they really think we're stupid. They had Hillary freaking Clinton on last night with Rich Amato, and they were like, imagine if somebody started raising doubts about an election. Can you imagine how bad that would be for democracy?
That's right. Now we go to our special Georgia correspondent, Stacey Abrams, on this. Curtis Houck, listen, thanks for joining us. I'm glad this had a happy ending for you. By the way, Brent Bozell, one of the most generous men around. That's why I was making a joke about him. He's fantastic. And he has given a start to so many great young careers, including Curtis. He's going to be with us for quite some time. And as St. Peter and St. Paul said at a wedding feast back in the early days of Christianity, Mazel Tov.
Thanks, guys.
Mazel Tov.
Thank you so much.
On your wedding. It is 7:16.
Chris Plant, weekdays 9 to noon.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Joined now by Kash Patel. He's the author of the new book, Government Gangsters. He's a former federal prosecutor, former deputy assistant to President Trump, and former chief of staff to the Department of Defense. And Kash, let's just get right to it, because you were a outspoken advocate for President Trump there leading up to the end of his presidency, and also a critic of how things went down in multiple states with regard to the tabulation of votes after the 2020 election. So are you, in fact, named as a co-conspirator in this latest one out of Georgia? I just want to make sure. Or are you an unindicted co-conspirator?
Not that fake Fannie Phyllis has told me yet, but who knows the her charade she's running down there. Look, well, who cares what your position is on Donald Trump? We have now just been told by federal, state, and local law enforcement officials that if you speak your constitutional right of freedom of speech to challenge the results of an election, just like Barbara Boxer, just like Speaker Pelosi, just like Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, Adam Schiff, and so many others did in 2001, 5, 16, 17, and counting, then you're going to be indicted. So I'm guessing the state attorney generals in all Republican states are going to follow suit and prosecute those individuals for challenging the results of multiple elections. Of course, they're not going to.
No.
It's a two-tier system of justice, and America is seeing it for what it is. And that's why I said it's irrespective of how you feel of Donald Trump.
Not to mention, Kash,
violation of free speech.
Not to mention it's taking place in Georgia, ironically the home of Stacey Abrams. The jokes write themselves there. But, Kash, let me ask you a more fundamental question beyond the merits of the case, which there are none. But don't these mirror the charges that Jack Smith has brought at the federal level? I mean, even Ruth Marcus today in the Washington Post, Ruth Marcus, Kash, although acknowledging that this isn't technically double jeopardy, but by charging the president at a local level, at a state level in Georgia, and then also federally on the same charges, that really does muck up the works.
It mucks up the works not just because it's the sort of too cute by a half or double jeopardy, but by the fact that federal cases always go before state court prosecution. That's just the rule. Right. And so how she wants to try 19 defendants in 6 months is absurd, and she knows it. But my biggest problem is her illegality of the charging document itself. Look, as a former national security prosecutor and public defender, there is one thing that every state has on the books that is inviolable. Grand jury proceedings are never allowed to be publicized before a judge authorizes and unseals them. And when that happens, if it happens, the entire case gets thrown out. Here you have Fannie Willis, or whatever her name is, come to the podium at 11:30 p.m. midnight Eastern time, by the way, 6 hours after court's closed, to rush this indictment to the podium. And when she's confronted with how was it that an exact copy of the indictment was released by the clerk of the courts not 6 minutes before she got there, 6 hours, she claims she has no idea how court paperwork is filed at her own district in Fulton County. Jeez. That is an outright lie. She has her name on it. She stamps it. They sent it out to Reuters, a media publication. Donald Trump's legal team should be challenging her, calling her out on her line, not to mention Congress needs to haul her in, because I guarantee you this county district attorney's office received federal funding from the DOJ.
We've been picking this apart all morning, and much obliged to Margot Cleveland at the Federalist for breaking this down overnight. One of the conspiratorial acts, Kash Patel, I kid you not, and for those of you who are just joining us, this is not a joke. One of the conspiratorial acts cited in the indictment is Donald Trump going to Twitter and telling people that that he says, I'm watching the public hearing in Georgia on the election on OAN. It's amazing. That's it.
I honestly saw that on Truth Social this morning, and I thought it was a joke. But I guess
telling people on Twitter that he's watching a public hearing that is being televised, and it's amazing.
And Mark Meadows asking for a phone number so the president can call someone. That's the job of a chief of staff. That's what you do.
An act of conspiracy.
No, and look, I'm glad you bring this up because, I've handled RICO cases before, and we used them to go after mobsters and mafia-type crimes. And Fannie Willis, keeps talking about the corruption. That's the word she uses in multiple counts of the indictment. Okay, good luck convincing the world that Donald Trump didn't think he won the last presidential election because the objective-subjective standard in the law is the only one that matters. Not what's in Fannie Willis's head or Hillary Clinton's head or Speaker Pelosi's head. It's what's in Donald Trump's head. And every piece of evidence that's going to come out is going to show you that Donald Trump is still to this day saying to the world, I won. Yeah. And that is his constitutional right to do. Whether you disagree with him is a decision for the polls. It is not a decision for the courtroom. So as she has used federal law improperly in state court, whatever happens to this case in state court, this is going to the Supreme Court of the United States. And just so people understand criminal cases in state court, murder cases take 3 years. DUI misdemeanors take almost a year to get to trial. She wants this case to go to trial with 19 co-defendants in 6 months. You saw her true intentions to weaponize justice and get a headline. That's what she's looking for. She's going to fail.
Cash, it's not like Donald Trump has anything going on in his life for the next 6 months, right? So,
Cash, he's going on vacation.
Kash Patel, you raise RICO there. I mean, it makes it sound like these people are acting like gangsters. By the way, Cash, what's the name of your book that's coming out at the end of the month?
I love you, Larry. Government gangsters. I finally defeated the very gangsters like Fannie Willis, DOJ, and FBI. 9 months of litigation, and they're finally letting it out in September. But you can get it on pre-order, governmentgangsters.com. I think you might find some things in there that, we call balls and strikes on.
Thank you, Cash. Kash Patel, always good to talk with you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up, he's the president of Heritage Foundation, and we're going to ask him whether it's a conservative position to want to continue funding the war effort in Ukraine. Simple question. Kevin Roberts joins us next. Well, this 7 o'clock hour is already loaded, as we told you, but coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, we're not going to let up at all. We're going to kick things off at 8:05 with Jerry Dunleavy and James Hassan. They've got a brand new book detailing, it's the definitive book now on the fiasco of Biden's pullout, the tragedy of his pullout of Afghanistan 2 years ago this week. Then at 8:15, Liz Harrington, spokesperson for former President Trump. And then at 8:35, Eunice Davidson and Tony Henson, they're with Native American Guardian Association. They want the Washington football team to be named Redskins, like it ought to be. So that's coming up. Julie Gunlock is with us. Julie.
Good morning.
Good morning. Look who's with us now. It's the president of the Heritage Foundation, Dr. Kevin Roberts. It's been a while. Dr. Roberts, good to talk with you. Thanks for being here.
Larry and Julie, it's always a pleasure.
Well, I appreciate that. Listen, the Heritage Foundation obviously stands for conservative principles and what some of the bedrock foundational values we conservative, really Americans, have always held on to. So I'm curious as to what your opinion is on this renewed call for more funding for the Ukraine war effort. Obviously, Russia's the aggressor. Obviously, Russia is the bad actor. Obviously, if we can support Ukraine, we should. But it seems like there's no end game here, and now the Biden administration's coming back and asking Congress for more and more and more. What are we to do with this?
Well, you frame it perfectly. The fact that there's no American strategy on the end game tells us that as conservatives, we ought to oppose this $24 billion in new spending. And just for context, as you say, well, Russia is the bad actor. We want the Ukrainians to win, and yet the American people have invested $113 billion formally. It's probably informally upwards of $200 billion. And all we have, and it's tragic that this is the case, all we have for it is at best a stalemate. And the absence of an endgame tells me, as a conservative and all of us at Heritage, that we need some other strategy to bring this war to a conclusion.
And there's been definitive statements from the State Department and from the White House that there will be no negotiation, no discussion of a peace agreement. And if anybody raises the spectrum saying, hey, maybe we should talk and figure out how to resolve this stalemate, you're called a sympathizer for Moscow.
Right.
Yeah, it's the typical game of false dichotomy in Washington D.C., where somehow if you say that you're on Putin's side. And I was asked that question a couple months ago, and I said, look, just as a faithful Christian, I want peace. I mean, I find it a tragedy. It's like a blow to our gut every time we hear about the tens of thousands of Ukrainian lives lost. We ought to strive for peace as conservatives, as American conservatives. And you know what? The good news, at least politically in the United States, is that a growing percentage of Americans are tired of this feckless strategy by President Biden and the complicit nature of people like Mitch McConnell, who aren't conservatives, somehow creating a guilt complex that the rest of us who are real conservatives have to comply.
Wow. I think what also angers Americans is we see a lot of things happening in this country. When you look at that $200 billion, which is probably really is $200 billion being sent to Ukraine, the president can't even make a statement about Hawaii. We've got continuing problems on the southern border. We've got major crime in U.S. cities. Talk to me a little bit about how you think the American public is feeling at this point when we're going to be sending more money to Ukraine.
Well, Julie, as you know, I try to spend as little time in the Imperial City as possible, even though Heritage, of course, is headquartered there. And I was in Iowa over the last weekend at the State Fair talking to everyday Iowans who are just like everyday people in Maryland and Virginia and D.C., right? It's your audience, right? And they say, look, we want the Ukrainians to win, but we're tired of just throwing money away with no strategy. And then, to your point, those of us like me who grew up on the Gulf Coast and survived hurricanes and needed that assistance after those storms are looking at what Congress did recently, where they've taken money from the FEMA account, the emergency aid account, and given it to Ukraine as a real slap in the face to the American people. And ultimately, to sum up here, too many policymakers in D.C., and they aren't just Democrats, think that they're smarter than the average American, and the average American is tired of hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I know that there's concern about, whether the Crimean Peninsula is part of a deal if you do have a negotiated peace or if you retain some territory for Russia after all of this. And if Michigan was able to cede Toledo to those barbarians in Ohio, then these guys should be able to work something out. I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
Dr. Roberts, I want to pick your brain, though. You just said you were in Iowa, and I saw a lot of video of you there mingling with the candidates and the voters. I know how important our school system is, education is, and policies are schools, and most importantly, having parents get back to the position of having a voice at the table. I'd love your evaluation of whether, first of all, that issue was front and center for a lot of these candidates who want to be president, and if so, which ones do you think really sort of knocked it out of the park?
Yeah, I watched several interviews. Of course, the Heritage's position is we want the most conservative man or woman who can win the general election to be the president, because our focus is policies and ideas. But I would say on that point about education freedom, about school choice, that Governor Kim Reynolds, who's not a candidate but was interviewing all these candidates, did an excellent job, given her own record, of forcing that. I think Governor DeSantis, of course, who has a great track record on that, had wonderful responses there. Vivek Ramaswamy, who's not held office yet, of course, was focused on that. And I would make a prediction that although Tim Scott was not there this last weekend, his slot in the schedule is coming up later in the week, that he will probably do really well on that question as well. So Heritage is paying attention to all of the substantive policy questions. We're grateful to all of the candidates who showed up, because the American people, while they believe that there is real injustice with the Trump indictments, they really want to have a conversation about policy, and Heritage is trying to amplify that.
Kevin Roberts, Heritage Foundation. Always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's always a pleasure. Take care.
All right. You betcha. That was a great conversation with Kevin Roberts about the Ukrainian government. Speaking of corrupt governments who waste taxpayer dollars, Loudoun County, Virginia, back in the news. Let's not forget Nick Minnock's great reporting at WJLA, covering the supervisors in Loudoun County taking tax dollars and going on a junket, a pleasure trip to Ghana and to Uruguay, 5-star hotels overlooking the ocean, business class flights, tours of wineries, But Phyllis Randall, the chair of Loudoun County Supervisors, was challenged about that. She maintained that, the return on investment for Loudoun County was through the roof, remember?
Well, again, when you say $1.37 billion in commercial investment, that return is a very high ROI. So 2,500 new jobs, $1.37 billion in investment.
There you go. $1.37 billion coming into Loudoun County and 2,500 jobs. Well, Nick Minnock did a little investigating there, saying, show me the money, Phyllis.
Yeah.
Where is all that money? Where are those jobs? Well, here's how the report goes.
Supervisor Mike Turner repeated Randall's claims, writing in a letter to the editor, quote, "The Loudoun County Sister City program has been an outstanding program for years and has generated $1.37 billion in increased commercial tax revenue, more than 2,500 jobs," unquote. County Supervisor Julie Briskman has also reiterated these claims. And for more than a month, 7 News has been asking for proof. After Randall didn't provide proof of her claims, 7 News submitted a Freedom of Information request. Now, 7 News has the list of companies that make up Randall's, Turner's, and Briskman's claims. According to the list, it appears none of the companies that make up their $1.37 billion of commercial investment claim are from Loudoun County sister cities. None. When you look at the county's list, a company from the Netherlands makes up more than $1 billion of Randall's, Turner's, and Briskman's $1.37 billion commercial investment claim. Loudoun County does not have a sister city in the Netherlands. And Loudoun County doesn't have sister cities in France, South Africa, Ireland, Switzerland, the UK, New Zealand, Spain, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Italy, Denmark, Belgium, Japan, and Australia. After learning the investments and jobs didn't come from Loudoun County's sister cities, 7 News emailed Randall, Turner, and Briskman asking, are they trying to mislead people to justify the Board of Supervisors' taxpayer-funded sister city international trips? We'll let you know when and if they answer this question.
Yeah, we're not holding our breath, Nick.
Good God, what a grift.
What a great report. We have to go to Ghana and Uruguay because that brings in over $1 billion in money. Really? Show us where all that money's coming from. Well, the Netherlands. The Netherlands and France.
But don't forget, as Ian Pryor always says, the Chardonnay Antifa, the leftists in Loudoun, don't ask tough questions.
No.
They're fine with Phyllis Randall just prattling on and making up lies.
Well, and if we ask questions or Nick Minnock asks questions, we're fascists, right?
Right.
And let's not forget Phyllis Randall is up for re-election, so vote accordingly, Loudoun County.
Please.
And he also mentioned Julie Briskman there. What was her claim to fame? What actually made her qualified to be on the LA County Supervisors?
I think she flicked off the president.
That was it. Yeah, she was riding a bike and she gave President Trump the middle finger. So
just a shock.
You get what you vote for, Loudoun County.
Go.
It's 7:54. Coming up, Liz Harrington, spokesperson for former President Trump. Plus, we'll check in with the authors of the brand new book detailing the fiasco that was Biden's pullout from Afghanistan on the 2-year anniversary. Plus, bring back the Redskins. All coming up in the 8 o'clock hour.